everybody, and welcome to Mega Shift today. I am thrilled to have Kristin Kovner from K-Squared Strategies joining the Trendcast. Kristin is the CEO and founder of K-Squared Strategies, a boutique consulting firm that is helping a variety of businesses meet the moment in AI and in the marketing ad tech landscape. So I'm really excited to get her insights on the big trends that are coming through and how marketing can drive revenue in this AI era. So how are you doing today, Kristin?
I am doing great. Live to you from Tribeca here in Manhattan, and I'm sure we'll have cars and lots of traffic going by.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It is a Friday afternoon, beating the rush. So Kristin, I know you've had a really dynamic background working in advertising marketing, and just thrilled to get your insight today. Before we hop into some of the really lofty questions, I'd love to just get a sense of what you do at K-Squared Strategies and how your firm came to be.
Yes, well, I will say that looking back, it seems really obvious. But at the time, it was not obvious this is where we would end up. I am the founder and CEO of K-Squared Strategies, as you mentioned. We are a marketing strategy consultancy that helps high growth tech and media companies with their go-to-market strategy. And so I'm early to digital marketing. I was early at YouTube and Google. I actually joined Google the week we bought YouTube and helped with that, really launching the video advertising market then. I followed a guy called Tim Armstrong, who's amazing, over to AOL to help with that company's turnaround, where I met a lot of great people. And then back in 2013, I started my own consultancy to help other companies that weren't as big as those two behemoth tech platforms with how they were doing marketing. Selfishly, because I wanted more time to travel and do other things. And then also because I really wanted to take what I'd learned at those big companies and bring it to smaller places that couldn't necessarily afford a huge team. I was totally wrong, though, because I thought I was going to work, as a part-time contractor for a company one at a time. And it ended up being that our time was booked from the very beginning with big brands like Spotify and smaller brands like TapAd. And so it's been an incredible run for the past 14 years. I know we'll talk more about this later, but we have a distributed team, and it's just been really, really fun. And I love what I do, which is helping companies grow.
Amazing. It's so fun to bring on these different companies at different stages and helping them on a variety of different marketing tasks and go to market. So really excited to hear how you do that and what that arc has looked like for you over time. So, as you mentioned, you spent some time at YouTube, Google, and AOL during the early dawn of the video ad market. And now we're just in a completely fast-paced environment where a lot of things are happening really fast. So let's take us back to kind of that early YouTube acquisition when you joined Google. Like, what were those early days like, and how is technology shaping storytelling at that time?
It's incredible. I mean, I look back, it's hard to believe it was now, 20 years ago. But I actually joined Google off of an ad on Craigslist. If you can imagine, back then there were only a couple thousand people working at Google. And I was a reporter at the time. I was a reporter for Smart Money, the Wall Street Journal's magazine. And after college, I had been an economic consultant working on these large data sets and putting in reports to the court against antitrust. So I sort of learned about Microsoft and the open web, what was meant to be the open web, and got this tech bug. So between that and writing, I was looking for a job, and I saw on Craigslist this posting that said, "Do you tell stories with data?" And I thought, yeah, I did that for a year as an economic consultant. "And can you write?" And I thought, yes, I'm a journalist. I write for a living. It said, "Come join Google's field marketing team," which was a very scrappy team, about a dozen people, helping with all the business marketing for the entire global organization of Google at the time. And when I joined, I got to raise my hand and say, I want to work on YouTube, because we were a centralized organization. And so I was very fortunate to get to work with them directly, and Chad and Steve and Susie Ryder, who basically taught me everything I knew about marketing. And it was a tremendously exciting time because we were building a market that didn't exist, and we were educating marketers and advertisers as much as we were selling to them. There's this great line that Tim Armstrong used to say that, you don't sell search, you explain search. And that always stuck with me. That sort of, once you understood the magic of it, it was sort of a no-brainer and a very easy sale for folks to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you really have been on the forefront of this category creation and working on that, building that ad business, building that search business, and the relationship between the two. And so I believe K Squared Strategies, one of the mottos on your website is that like marketing actually builds markets. And so that's a really bold statement and like a stake in the ground in terms of how you run your business and consult others. So kind of what does that mean to you? And what are you seeing now with like how marketing is building markets?
Yes, we believe that firmly. So marketing is not a cost center. Marketing is a revenue driver. It's how we think of ourselves. I just had a meeting before this talking with a new media company, and they said, what do you need to know to be able to help us with marketing? And I said, I need to know about your business. Tell me what your business goals are, and then I can tell you how marketing can support it. So we just know that marketing works when it's not in a vacuum. You can't do marketing in a silo. You don't do branding for branding's sake. I firmly know that it's all in the service of building the business. And so marketing works best when it's actually creating a market. And so when you're dealing with nascent technologies, whether it was edge computing, we had a client in that was sort of very at the forefront of that. They ended up getting bought by Intel not long after we started working with them, or in other areas where you just didn't even know that the problem was solvable. We have a health tech client that's incredible, helping people get to specialist doctors within 24, 48 hours instead of waiting weeks and months. These are problems we all have every day, or if you're in a high-tech industry, problem you might not know existed. And so you have to teach people about it in order to create that market for that demand, whether it's something new and novel or whether it's just a new solution to a problem you've had for a long time. So there's nothing I love more than getting to educate people on something that they can actually find a solution for. And then lo and behold, we're the ones who can help you solve it. So marketing absolutely can create markets when done correctly.
I love that. And coming from a space of working with different developer communities and coders, and sometimes they're really embedded in the technology and know what problems they're solving and their tool selection and their stack, right? But they need that marketing expertise and that kind of understanding the marketing funnel, even, awareness, engagement, conversion. Some of these concepts maybe traditional engineers might not be as familiar with. So it's really cool to see how you do that, day in, day out with K Squared Strategies. So kind of what would be, an example of what that was like in the early days when you were at Google or AOL, how that nascent technology kind of took hold?
Well, I remember the first time we hosted this thing called Videocracy. And it was basically our version of an upfront, of a digital upfront before those existed. This is like pre-IAB doing that. And we brought all the buyers together, and it was really incredible because we had footage of 13-year-old kids, and we'd ask them, how do you spend your time? What are you watching? And what's your favorite show? And I remember that's the word we used. What's your favorite show? And they would say things they saw on YouTube. And it was this aha moment for all the buyers who were television buyers in the audience. Like, well, that's not a show. That's like an online video, or that's this other thing. And it was this great aha moment of, oh my goodness, this is where the consumption is. This is where people are actually spending their time. The future audience is here, and I need to engage with it some way. I can no longer sort of buy in this one way that's forgetting all of that. And we've seen that time and time again. I'd say the newest area now that I see, even with the most experimental marketers, they don't know how to buy into streaming or why that's important, or that people beyond live stream gaming is sort of happening on these platforms. And so it's been really fun to have those moments of awakening for people that, oh, wait, there's a new way to think about this. Oh, and actually this is a better way to do what I need to do, which is build my brand and make a connection with an audience. So I remember being on stage at Videocracy and this moment of like, but that's not a show. And like, well, what does a show really mean? And now here we are, 15 years later, where people winning the awards are all connected TV and streaming shows. And we don't think of traditional broadcast as the behemoth it once was.
Yeah, 100%. It's so fascinating just to see how mature these markets have become, and how even there's new entrants and new players, and it's an exciting time. So I think that's a really great segue, because the way that K Squared is talking about advising high growth tech and media, a lot is changing right now, and it's changing rapidly. So kind of what signals are you following? Like, there's this idea of like incremental change versus a big bang exponential change, where your team's like reading the tea leaves and looking at these signals, whether they're very, apparent or kind of more nuanced.
Yeah, well, I think what you're getting at is sort of this idea of incremental change versus this step level change. And we're always working with our clients to find out what are the things we can do that would give you step level change. And that starts with the data, right? So it's not just understanding what you want to say to somebody, it's actually understanding who's your audience, what do they care about, where are they spending their time, and how can we help them? And so one of the things we often are doing is a really basic thing in any medium, which is, what business are you in? What problem are you solving? It's not about how great your technology is. It's not about why your mousetrap's a better mousetrap. Or I love when I talk with folks and I say, who's in your competitive set? And they say, no one, because no one does what we do. And you're like, well, yeah, obviously, but still. And so for me, it's really fun to find those areas that are underexploited, whether it is a new channel where they have audience, but they're not programming to and not being present on, or it's a new type of story or a new type of positioning. So I look back and I see lots of times when just a repositioning can be the thing that gets them step level change, and sort of how do you talk to the market in a new way? How do you lead with why? And I know these are sort of big, lofty concepts, but they really can have a huge impact. And I'll make it in some of the least glamorous way. I worked with a company where they had these incredible results, but they weren't telling anybody about them. So they said, we know what we're doing really works. And so we're like, okay, well, we need to build some case studies. And the minute we had a case study, it was this incredible moment where, very small sales team, startup atmosphere, Rob. And it was just so funny to see the salesperson had been hitting them up on LinkedIn, trying to get this account meeting and trying to make inroads at the client. And they didn't. And sure enough, then they send this case study and the client gets right back to them, prospect gets right back to them and says, oh, I need someone who does just what you're talking about. Let's have the meeting. And they like close the sale in record time, and sort of, it became a step level change for them. And sort of, it can be, again, new channels that are coming out, new ways to address people, new formats of the information you already have, whether it's this podcast or something different. Some people are visual learners. Some people like to read things on their own time. Some people are audio learners. And so I think it's really fun to play and sort of test what the market will give you. And that's why it's so important to be geared towards action, of really just getting things out in the market and not letting perfection be the enemy of good. We're all perfectionists, but just getting out in markets so you can get the feedback and double down on what's working has been very important for clients sort of across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely resonate with that. Don't let perfection be the, what was the sayings that don't let the perfection be the enemy of
Good,
progress,
yeah.
of good, or progress. Yes.
Yeah.
And so, in partnering with these companies, like they definitely have their different health metrics and ways of tracking their own business, which, definitely makes sense to them. And, from a marketing standpoint, being data driven is really important, right? And now we have all these systems that can parse the data and track the clicks and cart abandonment, or whatever their business model may be, right? So in this AI saturated world, like, what do you still think requires human judgment in this marketing and tech context, and how do you keep like campaigns and positioning really authentic when we're up against such this big wave right now?
Well, I mean, this is the big mega shift, right? AI is the mega shift in how it's affecting not only our industry, but our audiences, our team structure. But AI is a partner. AI doesn't replace human expertise. And so we use AI as a writing partner, as a brainstorming partner, as a first draft. It's like a really good junior marketer, right? But you still need to know what you're asking it to do. It's really interesting. I recently had our PR team, and you could just tell that the prompt wasn't what it needed to be to get the right answer. And you could tell the difference in the output from the same, Claude 2 times a more senior person, a more junior person of what they'd put in as the prompt. So you have to know what to ask, and then you have to know what good looks like. And there's no substitute for 20 years of experience of knowing what good looks like and what's not good. There's a risk, I think, that AI spits out a lot of things that sound sort of the same and they sound sort of good, but when you unpack them a little bit, you realize there's a lot of jargon there. It all sounds the same. It's not differentiated. And so you need to kind of know that this is a first draft and you're going to edit. Like nothing we do goes out the door that's generated by AI. Everything we do is touched by a human and driven by a human. You also need a human to understand what to make of the data and the signal. So yeah, all these systems, which by the way, I don't overstate it, Rob. Most companies we work with do not have a perfect back-end flow of data from one system to another. We actually have clients whose sole purpose of being or main purpose of being is to help them connect these data systems and get a single source of truth and data. And that's obviously the holy grail. But you have a lot of data, but you don't have a lot of insight. And AI, I don't think is, at least today, is not great at giving that insight. They're great at suggesting things or noticing patterns, but you need a human to then say, what do you do with it? So you have all this data stream, you have this competitive analysis, but like, what action does it lead you to take? That requires human expertise. That requires human brains to have strategy around and hypotheses that then you test. So what I love is that it makes it really easy to say, I need data on these 5 things, and I don't want to go spend all the time crawling it and getting it. But it doesn't substitute a human's judgment of what to do with that data.
Yeah, it's really astute. You mentioned that because getting those single sources of truth, is the holy grail, right? And I think like a lot of companies and consumers and folks are just kind of thinking about trust overall. Like, can they trust the output of an AI model, or can they trust a company that they see on an ad that they're like on one of these platforms, right? And like, is this real? Was it AI generated? Was it how targeted is this? Am I over targeted? Like, were they listening to me on my phone? Things like that. So I guess just to kind of frame the question, when it comes to trust and brand reputation and building these businesses, like trust is almost a form of capital. Like, what are companies getting wrong about trust? And how do you advise companies to retain that brand trust and build systems that the leaders can trust and that ultimately end customers can trust?
It's such a great question. Putting AI aside for a moment, many companies are mistaking the idea of transparency for trust, and they're not the same thing. So transparency, I feel, has been the direction many companies have gone. Well, we're going to share what we're doing. We're going to put out a press release that says XYZ. But that's not the same thing as trust. Trust is expertise. Trust is knowledge. Trust is built over time, and as we all know, can be ruined in an instant. So to me, I think about trust as transparency, but consistently over time, and the courage to admit what you don't know or what you may even get wrong. And so trust comes from being alongside your customers, your partners, learning with them, educating them, sharing your knowledge, and helping be a shepherd, sort of guiding them through something. Whether that is with their money, if you're a fintech company, or with their data, if you're in a media business, or with their time and their attention. So I do think a lot of companies are getting it wrong, that just simply by saying, well, we're going to share what we do, that's being transparent. That's actually not building trust. They're two different things. When it comes to the AI piece, you've got to be honest with your customers about what you're using and what you're not. We work very closely with Shutterstock, and they're actually at the forefront of generative AI and have put forth, together with the United Nations and others, a framework and a guideline for watermarks that explain what's been generated by AI. People don't want to find that they thought they were looking at a real person in an ad and then find out it was AI generated. So you have to be transparent about that if you want to keep that trust. And I do think it's getting better though, right? So we have this wonderful presentation I worked on where we would actually quiz the audience of like, is these two videos, which one is faked and which one is real? And same thing for imagery. And it was kind of a mean joke because all of them were generated by AI. And, people are very sure in their own cognitive expertise to say, no, this is real or something's off about that. But the reality was like everything was created by Gen AI. It's so good. And so I think it's sort of a waste of our human experience to be spot the fake or spot what's generated. And instead, I think we need to think about AI as a tool for creative, right? Like it's a really good thing that companies don't have to spend carbon footprint and money flying people into Iceland or anywhere. I love Iceland, but to go do a shoot on location that could be done in a green screen and look every bit as effective for a car ad, right? Like you don't need to be in that exact space in real life every time to have the same impact and emotional impact of an ad. And yet, I think we're seeing that be true for ads, but I think people would respond very badly if it were for a long form cinematic thing. It wasn't on location where you think it was. So I don't know, but that said, everyone's been saying LA is Canada, Canada's LA for a while in TV shows. So I think we'll see where that shakes out. But again, being forthcoming about what you're doing, where you're using these tools, will help build trust. And then trust, again, is transparency over time and sort of admitting what you don't know.
I love that. And yeah, thanks for mentioning the really interesting case study on the watermarks. Fascinating stuff. So in your career trajectory, you've advised hundreds of founders and companies and marketing departments. So from those early days to AOL and the turnaround that you helped facilitate in advising these AI first, AI native brands, what leadership lessons still transfer? Which playbooks are no longer relevant? How do you kind of find that happy medium?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm smiling because yes, in any industry, there are always things that work and don't work. We're at a moment where the old playbooks are really being questioned. And I'd say the past 10 years was about feeding the beast. More and more platforms. How are we going to create all this content to feed it? How can we slice and dice? And AI is amazing because it can, with one button, Adobe, I can resize everything. So it's good to go for TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're now in a world, and what I'm starting to see, where more is not more. And a targeted, especially content strategy, and a mega shift from not what should we say to what's important to say. What do I want to take up space and the limited attention and time of my audience? How do I show respect for them by actually only saying what's important? And where do I say it to them and how? And so I think we're moving from this idea of like a reach frequency model and sort of being loudest and the idea of breaking through the clutter to being impactful. Because so much AI content is so bad and so generic, I think we run the risk of people starting to tune us out in even formats that not banner blindness, but blog blindness and video blindness. And sort of, we might see a retreat sort of back to in real life communities and events and engagement that way. And I think that's a good thing. Like, I think being in real life is great. So I think we're at a really interesting moment where we have to think about what do we actually want to say. More is not more. And we see that bear out. Shutterstock is putting out a report that'll have data around this too. And it's really impressive. People are spending more money than ever on advertising, which is great for all the agencies and great for everybody who works in media. But the impact is lower. And so you have to really stop and look at data and say, okay, well, what can we be doing to actually have impact? How do we change the way we treat our relationship with customers, with people? And how do we think about being more impactful and useful in what we give them? I remember Marissa Mayer used to say at Google Times, sometimes the right answer is an ad, right? Like, ads are not the devil, because, when I'm searching for shoes or a particular model of something, the answer should be, the ad for the thing I want to buy. And so, you think about your work with Amazon, it's just a different world of what's the right communication for the right person. And how do we not sort of just be the loudest person shouting and adding to all the nonsense and noise that's out there? I think AI runs a real risk if we don't start to really modulate it. If companies fire their whole marketing team, so like AI can do it, and it really can't because they don't know what good looks like, you run the risk of kind of turning off your entire market and your entire potential market. So that's a tricky time that we're in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really great segue, because I know that K-Square is operating is that you have this distributed network of different experts and specialists. And, as you mentioned, a CMO or, VP is saying, okay, everybody, AI is going to do it instead, right? Like, that's not necessarily the solution. So there are other ways that companies can think about leveraging insight and keeping costs low and like tapping experts. And, even, if there is a riff or layoffs and stuff, like there's a lot of different models that this can work. And so, K Squared has this global network of specialists instead of like the traditional agency model hierarchy. So do you think like that is the future of creative and strategic work, especially aided by AI? But how is that unlocking value for clients? Like what was the choice that you've gone with this model versus kind of a traditional brick and mortar New York agency?
There's a lot in that question. So I'll take a couple.
Yeah.
One was selfish. I love doing the work. And, I was running a large team before I started my consultancy, and it was really fun to be a mentor and help other people who are managing the work, other people who were actually doing the work. But I wanted to get back closer to it. And so there's nothing I love more than actually sitting down with a CEO or a CMO and helping them unlock tons of additional capacity or a new insight or a new way of going to market that's going to turbocharge their revenue growth or their user growth. And so that, I think, when you have professionals who have a lot of expertise, we have graphic design and paid media and web development and writing, people want to do the work and they don't want to spend a lot of time in the other stuff that's administrative and nonsense or politics. And we're really freed. We were early to that, to sort of say we want to step outside of that model and be more outsourced. We were also pre-COVID in being distributed. So our overhead could be really low, which means that our clients get the benefit of really senior experts without that overhead of the brick and mortar, because we don't have a ton of junior staff that we have to pay or a big office that we're having to maintain. And so you get, no ramp up time. We're sort of right there in there with them, ready to start immediately. We've seen most of this before. The stuff we haven't seen before is at the forefront. So we're happy to build it with folks. And so we love that. And it works really well for the clients. We're just being able to go quickly and have the right answer the first time, and get them on the path to either hiring their own team in-house or having us supplement in new ways. There are many instances where we were the foundational marketing team outsourced, and we can scale up and scale down because we assemble the right people for each team. So as a company grows, we help them hire a VP of growth, and we'll support on all the PR. And then as they bring in someone in-house to do communications, we can take on paid media and sort of those different things and just rounding out those areas. But we're often the first people in just to help them get going, because most startups don't have, or even not startups, most high growth earlier stage companies don't have the budget to bring in super senior folks full time. But you don't really need our team full time. You need us to set the strategy, to be there. We're just a lot more efficient than people who haven't done it for many, many years. And so I do think, and I say this with, like, it's a bittersweet thing to say, I do think our model is the model of the future, but it scares me. And it scares me because our model works because we had 20 years of doing this. We know how to write the good prompts. We know how to see a problem and quickly frame a marketing plan on our own without any tools. We know what good looks like. We know how to read the data. If you don't have those junior marketers because they're replaced by AI or whatever else it might be, a team of 30 marketers is now a team of one really smart marketer and a bunch of tools, or 5 marketers. What will that next generation be? So I feel like we're in a really good place that we have it now, and we're able to help all our customers get outsized value and capacity. But I do sort of shudder to think in 20 years, where will we be if we haven't trained another generation of folks to sort of take this forward and do it for the future. So I don't know about that. It makes me very worried.
But yeah, thank you for sharing that insight. It's definitely a mixed bag. It's thanks for that honesty there, and of course, it sounds like you really pioneered some of those early distributed models, distributed working models back in the day, and it's evolving. So, in regards to the next question, thinking about like what is the common thread? So you're consulting different types of businesses. You have fintech, media, AI, high growth. You mentioned medical, right? So kind of where are you seeing folks really need marketing support, and where is the biggest misconceptions? What are you seeing that they're getting wrong, and where do you see that they're getting right?
Yeah. Over the past 20 years, there's this tension of, I think the CEOs we work with are very quick to pivot, which makes sense when you're in a capital strained environment, but they don't have as much conviction as they need to have to sort of say, here's who we are, here's what we're going to stand for, and we're going to actually run this out and we have belief in it. So I do think there's been sort of, and that's not calling any client out, I think it's just a general thing, there's pressure. And so people are very quick to sort of pivot and move from a strategy that could be really successful if it doesn't deliver right away. And so I think that there is less of a willingness in a speedy environment. It's gotten sort of worse over time of, having conviction and saying, we know our audience, we know this is how we should be talking to them, we have a belief in that, and that's branding, right? I also think on the flip side, there's this ability to launch things up really quickly, and you've got to be able to fail fast. Like, that's absolutely true, and iterate. So within the context and the framework of having brand conviction of what we want to do and how we want to go to market, then you should iterate a lot. But I think, I would encourage everyone who runs a business, whether on the sales side or the marketing side, you are an expert. You know what you're doing. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in this field or in this job. So trust your instinct there, validate it with data, and iterate like heck so it actually works and gets the best result. The second thing I would say is a common thread is that marketing is here in service of sales. Like, we just are. We're partners. We're not there to replace sales. And we're certainly not there to be the scapegoat for sales. Like, I used to joke that no amount of good marketing can save a bad product or a product that doesn't have product market fit. And so I do think marketing can give you more runway to figure out that product market fit. It can help you paint a picture of where you're going, but ultimately it can't live in a vacuum. It is part and parcel of the sales organization or the growth organization to help you actually accelerate the business and the bottom line.
Thank you so much for that really interesting insight. Like, conviction, particularly with everything going on in the world and the backdrop, it's like, I think conviction and sticking to one's values, seeing things really play out and having that conviction is what every generation needs, right? And whether it's in business context or more of a socio-economic sort of context. So it's really interesting to hear you say that. So as mentioned, you've seen a lot of different inflection points in your career, and you're really helping drive some of those at the moment. You've had search, video, the emergence of these fintechs, and now AI. So, like, if you wrote a headline that you picked up some digital tablet newspaper or hologram in 5 years' time, like, what do you think that would say, and kind of what do you think the mega shift is now, like, that nobody's really talking about? And then I know AI is on the tip of everyone's tongue, but kind of like, where do you think this is all going?
AI and team structure. I think it's going to be very different in 5 years. I think our business is already changing dramatically. And I think a lot about what does the business of the future look like, and how do we help people be more successful, and what does success look like? But definitely AI, definitely hiring. I already mentioned to you that I'm worried that we have a bunch of young marketers who are not going to find a home and won't learn the skills to be able to be senior marketers in the future. That's troubling. I do think you're going to see more. This sounds a little self-satisfied, so I say it with hesitation, but I do think our model of distributed, super lean, and senior experts probably is closer to the norm in the future. When I remember at first it was like, wait, what do you mean you don't have a physical office? And I was like, yeah, but I can meet you anywhere, and I can also get on a plane. I think that post-COVID with AI, that's going to be the norm. So I think that people are more comfortable with that now. They're going to look for teams that can assemble and reassemble, so you're not paying for waste. We saw it with Snowflake, who's our client too. I mean, one of the best things about Snowflake is you only pay for the amount of storage and things that you're using, and dial up and dial it down. And this idea of a fixed rate model, I just don't think is going to fly for folks anymore as everything becomes more dynamic. And so the ability to assemble the right team for the right job is what's always happened offline. You didn't hire a whole set of utilities folks and you're paying for the plumber when you don't need him. It's happening now here too. And I think that that's only fair and right. And so I think will be more of the norm. Looking ahead, I also think that AI is changing discovery dramatically. And so I come from search, and I am really interested. There are a lot of companies, we're talking to some as well to help them, who are really redefining how do you get found as a newer brand, or even as an established brand. How do you maintain your presence and dominance, not just in retail media like Amazon, but also in the LLMs? Because I think people are still, it's being talked about for sure, but I think the vast majority of consumers are realizing that we're asking these questions that we used to ask a Google on a Claude or a ChatGPT, but I don't think that the marketing world has sort of realized what that impact is yet. And there's no playbook yet for sort of how to appear in those places and how to win in the LLM discovery platform. And so I think that will be the largest shift. How does that get monetized? Lots of tricky questions start to unfold from that. And so these models are as good as what you put into them. And so I'm really curious to see what will happen. That's my headline. There'll be some big article about the duopoly of AI LLM discovery in 5 years. That's really different with different names than we're used to today. And I think you'll see distributed teams as the norm and lean teams as the norm, potentially without the junior staff supporting them, which is troubling, but exciting.
Amazing. Love that forecasting. I love the trend forecasting. Here on MegaShift, we're documenting disruption is what I like to say. And to your last answer about this LLM, large language model driven search, for those listening to this session, we did cover that in relevance engineering in a previous episode. So if you're tuning in, please go feel free to listen to that episode. But yeah, Kristin, it's really been a pleasure chatting with you. Is there anything today that you'd like to share with our viewers or listeners that we haven't had a chance to discuss yet?
Oh my goodness. There's always more to talk about, Rob, but I will say that you don't have to have a big budget to have a big impact. At Google, we had $0 for the first years I was working there, and it was part of the fun. Marketing, creativity loves restraint, and marketing loves a mission that's challenged. So I would invite anyone who wants to work with our team to please reach out to me, because we love hard, hairy problems, and we also love helping you grow. So thanks for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate your seasoned point of view on all this, and know you've seen it all. So thank you, Kristin, and thanks, listeners and viewers. You heard it here on MegaShift. Thank you, everybody. Take care.